Joanna, what are you laughing at?
Life.
I don't know. We got Zach here. He's got his blazer on.
Blazer.
Yeah. Did you was that your outfit on the floor of the restaurant? Was it blazer or did you have to wear a suit and tie?
I was never a suit and tie person unless maybe on a holiday. It was like jacket if I had to. I wore a lot of vests. Vests were kind of my go-to move.
Ah, you're a vest guy. All right.
Yeah.
I could see it.
But you were in fine dining, right?
Seattle fine dining, kind of that's a loosely defined term.
Oh, okay.
So. It's your finest Patagonia.
No, not that kind of vest, please. Those I saved for off the floor.
So good. All right. Well, are we ready for today's episode?
Yeah.
Let's do it. From VinePair's New York City headquarters, I'm Adam Teeter.
And I'm Joanna Sciarrino.
And in Seattle, Washington, I'm Zach Jabal.
And this is the VinePair Podcast, live and in color. So, Zach, what you been drinking, buddy?
So as perhaps the two of you noted, as I made a point to send it to you, and also Instagram, had my first fresh hop beer of the season.
We know.
That time has come. I know we were all waiting anxiously for it.
Bated breath.
Ravenna Brewing. Mm-hmm. Yep. Centennial, real classic. Just tastes like fall, man. We got it was foggy this morning when I woke up. It's cooler here. Fall is 100% here, even though we have, of course, been calling it fall since after Labor Day. But yeah, it was all of it was right there. I'm already pissed off about the Seahawks. Football season is here. Fall is here. Things are good.
Good, man. What about
How about you, Joanna?
Yeah, I had a really nice skin contact wine that was on our orange wines list. Voon Malvasia Bianca. That was really good. Of California and Santa Barbara. I think it's where the grapes are from. And then also went to a Yankees Blue Jays game.
How'd that go?
We got rained out.
Oof, yeah, that was a rough one.
It was totally fine.
That was the Saturday that it poured.
Yeah, the sixth inning, and it just started pouring. So we left, and there was a rain delay, and I think the Yankees ended up winning. But I have a thought, which is that those beers are too big. I had a beer.
Ooh.
I had a beer, and I just think that if ballparks sold 16-ounce cans of beer, that they would make more money. And Evan disagrees with me. He said, no, people just want to buy these beers and they just want to chug them and get more and just get messed up. But I couldn't drink that entire beer without it getting warm.
Yeah.
Because what are they? They're
24 ounces.
30 ounces or something.
Huge.
Yeah. I don't think they're 19. I think they're more than that.
I mean, I think you could argue that the reason they do it is the margin is better. Right, because they're selling you this massive amount, like a big gulp, but they're also pouring it from a keg, so they're getting the keg from a better price.
No, cans.
Well, they're giving it to you in a can?
Yeah.
Oh, so they're giving you stovepipes.
Yeah.
No, I think there are 24-ounce cans.
They're
That's what I see at ballparks a lot.
They're not 19.2, and that's a stovepipe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's too big, too.
What do you think, Zach? Just out of curiosity.
I suspect that part of the reason that stadiums do that is because they're generally only allowed to sell 2 at a time, and so if they can sell you 2 that are bigger and you spend more money, that's probably better. And when I wrote that piece a little bit ago about kind of beverage programs at stadiums, a thing that I heard from everyone I talked to was that one of the biggest concerns from attendees at these events is they don't want to be in line for long. And so the part of the rationale behind a larger serve is you don't have to get up as often. And I think especially as we've seen fewer and fewer beer vendors roaming the aisles because it's just less effective than kiosks and walk through stores and things like that, all the more reason to kind of have a larger format that keeps people satisfied a little bit longer so they're not getting up from their seats.
Cool.
But they are too big. I would never buy one.
They are very big. And
personally.
then my brother and sister-in-law had the same size of Surfsides.
Oh, so they were with you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
The whole family baseball's together.
Well, no,
So you're pro baseball? Even though you were anti-sports when we were talking about sports bars?
I mean, for the record, I do not care to go. It's a fun activity, and Mac is old enough now to to be excited about. I think this is our 3rd baseball game that we've taken him to, and the first 2 he was just like a little blob, and so he had a hot dog and he ate his weight in popcorn and
right.
Anyway, so it was just more of the fun activity of it than it was that I actually care about. Baseball.
Fine.
Joanna, do you have a favorite ballpark food?
Yeah, the ice cream and the novelty helmet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Otherwise, baseball. No, ballpark food is not
gross.
good.
I thought she was going to say Dippin' Dots.
Well, you went to Yankee Stadium, which was your first mistake.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I've been drinking. What about you, Adam?
So I had, we decided to do this thing. Like, we used to not drink on Sundays. It's like one of the days that we would take off.
Yep. It's like a weekday.
Yeah, we decided that like it's the worst way to punish yourself before the week starts.
To drink or to not drink?
To not drink.
Oh yeah.
So now it's like the weekdays of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sometimes Thursday are sort of like the days we try to but then the rule then is we have to open something nice.
On Sunday.
Yeah, so Sunday night I made pizza and we opened a 2017 Da Milano Barolo that was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, really delicious. It's funny because like Naomi sometimes forgets the rule, and so I poured it in our glasses and we were sitting there like eating, and she takes it and she goes, "Well, this is better than the rest of the wine we had this weekend." And she's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, now I know. Now I remember why." And I was like, "Yeah, it's
special.
It's special. It's all good."
Yeah.
Otherwise, like not a whole lot. Like I made a person. So we had some people over for dinner on Friday, and one of our friends like brought a new guest who was in town visiting, and they really loved Negronis and were like looking for a riff. So I made them like a Kingston Negroni, which they'd never had before. So that was like fun to do for somebody else and be like, "Oh my God, I love rum and I love Negronis. This is so cool."
Right.
So that was fun. But otherwise, like not a whole lot. Trying to like,
pretty standard.
I feel like it's going to get very busy very soon. And so I'm trying to just like be a little chiller for now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
I get it.
So we have a reader question today.
We do. We have a reader question. I'm just going to pull it up so I don't mess it up.
Do not mess it up.
This is from Mike.
Mike.
And Mike's little email insignia is a Toronto Maple Leafs logo. So I just wanted to throw that out there. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, you got to say hi to your Canadians.
And Mike wanted us to discuss wine scores and how valid they are really and how useful they are. He didn't ask about the utility of them, but we want to talk about how useful and valid. I mean, I think the validity is a good part of this to discuss because we have definitely had people ask us about our scores and our scoring system and
so
how
you want to talk about
differs.
ours specifically?
No,
or?
I don't think so. I think Mike is asking about it more generally, but
like let's be clear, Mike. Our scores are the most valid of anyone's scores out there. I mean, how long do you have? I think that scores are the things that people want to know the most about. And we've covered this in so many ways, so many different times, because they are the thing for the lots of just generic consumers, right? The average Jane, Joe, whatever, that's what they come in contact with when they go to shop for wine is a score.
Yeah, it's the quickest way to determine the quality of a wine, right?
And the thing is that I think it is so crazy about the scoring systems is sub in one publication for another on the shelf talker. Like the store doesn't care as long as it's a decent score to put up like you might have some stores that are like, we only like, okay, so Costco famously only uses like 3 different publications. Like we only use Spectator and Venice. But like, you know how that is. Hush, wine snobs. But for the most part, like I found that most retailers you walk into, especially the retailers that I think I want to chat about a little bit later in the program, they're using any score that was sold to them when they were buying the wine in the first place.
They're not just like plucking it from the internet, right? It's curated for them,
a salesperson is telling them.
Yeah, okay.
A wine salesperson is like, look, maybe in a few markets where you have truly independent retailers that are so passionate about wine that they're doing their own research on the wine as well. Maybe they'll put the scores because they found them themselves.
Okay.
But usually then they're so passionate about the wine that like, I don't know, like at Keith's Wine Shop, Alphabet City Wine Company, like it was his notes about the wine, right? Because you're supposed to trust him. That's why you were there. You were trusting your wine retailer. So they're not putting any scores up, but those
are like staff picks, right? Yeah.
So I think let's tackle this first. The validity of the scores.
Yeah.
It totally depends on the publication you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And you have to do deep research, which is why this whole idea is so opaque. So for VinePair, right, like It is a very open submission process. It is free to submit. You must submit 2 bottles. You can only submit during an open call, of which we're tasting for a very specific thing. All the tastings are done by our tastings director, Keith Beavers.
And Hannah too.
And Hannah Staub, who is our now new managing editor. They taste the wines. There is no influence of money, advertising, etc. That's why you don't even pay to submit. And then if we like it, we score it. If we don't like it, we don't score it at all. You can write in and we will give you what we think that wine would have, the feedback. But we tend to not score anything below an 86 or something. We just don't even, we taste it, we dump it, we're done.
Yeah.
You can write in, but if you submit to us and you haven't seen a lot of your wines get scored, that's probably why. It's because, so maybe stop sending those wines in. But those are usually the reasons. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't have any, I have zero influence over that. Josh has zero influence over that. You have zero influence over that. Zach certainly has no influence over it. He lives in Seattle.
No.
But, it's they taste everything. But then, it's based on their backgrounds. So then again, the validity would be, do you trust it because you trust Keith, right?
Right.
And you then like the wines we score highly because you've decided you like Keith's palate or Hannah's palate, right? Other publications, same thing,
it's
right?
It's the same thing.
Right. Now the difference is there are a few publications, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get sued, but there are a few publications. Some start with the letter W, others start with the letter, I don't know, S. I don't know. There's an S in the name. I don't know, whatever. They have been accused of pay to play, right? So there are people in the industry that will say and look, I think it is very obvious to figure that out if you want to do a little research. If you go to one of these publications that's been around for a very long time, also based in New York, and see that The Prisoner has received 90+ point scores over and over and over again, they probably are a pay-to-play publication in some form or fashion. That is just not a 90+ point score wine. It just isn't. I'm sorry. Maybe it's an 85 to some people, but it is pretty much generally accepted across the industry that The Prisoner sucks. Or at least at this moment, is not a great wine. So if you see that there's one publication that keeps giving it above 90, and there are a few of these publications that do that, that could be an indication to you that publication probably is willing to take money for scoring wine. Right.
Or even if they're not directly taking money, if it's not quite
there
as
is
direct
an influence of whether
there's a relationship there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very clear. And that is, I would say to people, that is a very clear party trick to tell. Go and look at some of these publications and see scores of some of these big wines and see what they get. And if they're getting higher scores than they probably would if they were just judged on their merits, not the fact that they have big marketing budgets, then maybe you could question the validity of the entire publication scores. That's your choice. But, that's the sort of ethical conversation I would have, right?
Yeah.
Is that's the issue ethically. Now, otherwise, validity wise for the, I guess then though the issue is how much do they matter to the actual end consumer? I don't know. I know they mean a lot to a very specific retailer. And that retailer, I think, is one of two kinds of retailers. I think they matter to national retailers because they just can't be bothered unless it's a Whole Foods or a more specialty large retailers that are trying to have a perspective when it comes to wine. Mm-hmm. Or it matters to, and we've talked about this retailer before, the family wine shop, often immigrant owned liquor store business.
Okay.
So the way where you see these scores having a lot of impact is I hear this from a lot of people, New Jersey, right? There are a bunch of, there's a whole slew of wine shops owned by these Indian families, right? And they are all from India. They've come, they own a bunch of different wine shops. Each, they are getting around the only one law by it's a different family member owns each license.
Got it. Okay.
But this is a way that they are, joining the middle class and going into the upper classes, selling alcohol, right? But they don't have a massive background just based on their cultural heritage of where they've come from of drinking wine.
Sure.
So what's the easiest way to learn how to drink wine? You
Look at the scores.
You look at the scores. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk has talked about this a lot about his father because they were, I think, Russian immigrants when they came to America and New Jersey, and like when they opened Wine Library, like his dad was very much about the Wine Spectator and the Wine Spectator scores and buying the wines based on what the Wine Spectator had said, because he knew enough that he knew that like wine was a very good business to be in, and that he had a good margin there, and that he could own a store and he could sell things, and like he was coming to this country with a different but like it wasn't the kind of wine shop that we romanticize as, I think, wine lovers and journalists of like, I had a passion for wine, and like I'll never forget my first Clos Regard, and I decided from that moment on I had to own a small little wine shop on the East Village on Avenue C.
Yeah.
Sorry, Keith, that's you. Right. But you know, like that is just not the majority of people that sell alcohol in this country. They are people that know that it is a good business. Just like for a lot of people, like selling other cars is a good business, right? People need them. Right. People want them. People will pay for them.
Yeah.
So,
well, and just like cars, it's not just that the retailers are looking at reviews as a way to sort of understand what their inventory should be, but a lot of the customers who are coming through those stores are themselves either looking at scores in advance and searching for certain bottles, or they are going to be heavily influenced by the scores on the shelf, because not only are they perhaps not themselves super possessed of a lot of knowledge or confidence, but there's also a real instinct, whether it is wine or any of these other things. I mean, I do this. I look at reviews when I'm buying something that I'm not intimately familiar with. And so, I think for a lot of people, it's a very safe kind of way to make a decision in a landscape, whether it's a large box wine store, whether it's one of these kind of, maybe not as big, but maybe not as personal wine shops, or even, frankly, one of the, kind of personal wine shops that is really dedicated to someone or a small group of people's sense of taste. You're still kind of looking for some way to orient your purchasing, and scores have, since they've become prominent, have always been a huge way for people to kind of anchor their purchase decision.
Yeah, I think it's also much more common for people to go to a store and look up the wine they are going to buy based on what's available to them than to see a wine review online from a publication like VinePair and then go and seek that out based on its score.
Yeah.
So, exactly like you said.
I think that's true below a certain threshold. I think above a certain point threshold, or at least historically, there has been more of I've certainly heard this from lots of producers and retailers and things like that. When a wine, at least in the past, and I think it's still happening in some ways, scores in that, on a 100-point scale is a 98, 99, 100-point wine. People are going to start calling around, asking retailers, do you have that?
Yeah.
But for a 93-point wine, no. That's maybe a thing where on the shelf it makes the decision for someone between that and a similar wine that either doesn't have a score or has a lesser score. But it's certainly true that not every 94-point wine is getting a bunch of calls unless it's very cheap, because there are so many of them out there. And that was the thing I wanted to mention here, which is I think one of the things that's changed about wine scores is not just that there are different approaches. And I think it's worth noting too that a difference between what VinePair does and what some other scoring bodies do, like some publications that are really centered around wine reviews more than what VinePair does, are really attempting, and how good of a job they do of this is a separate conversation maybe, or at least a different part of this one. But they're trying to sort of say, we want to go out and sort of make an effort to survey, Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. And so maybe that's because they're still making direct requests from wineries. Maybe they're reaching out to the AVA Association and saying, send us wine. Maybe they're sending someone there to do tastings, et cetera. Yep. But they are more kind of broadly saying, hey, we want to get a survey of the area, of the appellation, of the style, whatever they're reviewing, as opposed to just sort of saying, seeking submissions. But again, reviews of wine are a portion of what VinePair does, but it's not the primary focus of the publication.
Our business is not a review. We are not a review publication. Right. We are a media company that has reviews as a component.
Yeah.
And I think, the submissions work for us and are a really good way to get, I think, a very good picture, especially in terms of American wine, of what's tasted. But we also we also trust Keith's palate. And so he's the one that sort of does that tasting for us. A lot of the other publications too. The other thing is that it's not just about trusting the publication, it's about trusting that specific critic for that specific region.
Yes.
Right. And
that's, I think, where things have kind of gone off the rails a little bit to my mind, which is not that any individual person who's reviewing any individual region, are bad at it or don't know what they're doing. I think lots of those people are pretty good at it and have some idea what they're doing. There are just too many of them.
I think there's too many of them.
Too many.
And I think
there's so many scores out there.
Too many people,
it's
or too
overwhelming.
many
I think there's too many people all reviewing different regions, but only these specific regions. And I also think, especially, and this is like my own bias, but I do think a lot of these people that wind up living in these places or being based near these places, corruption happens. Like, oh, my region is, I don't know, southern Spain, and I live there as well, or I have a home there, or I'm in southern Italy and I'm there all the time. And all of a sudden, like, there's just a lot of favors that are done for you. And all of a sudden, those wines, like, again, because also I think what actually has helped us in that regard with Keith and VinePair is that because it's only him and then Hannah sometimes, he's so fucking busy. He doesn't have time for like the wine lunches or the wine dinners or the trips and and then feeling like he was given favors. Like he doesn't even have time to be like, hey, like I have 2 weeks. And this is a true story. I've heard of a critic do this. I have 2 weeks. I'm planning a birthday party, my 45th birthday party or whatever. And I know that you have a chateau in Tuscany. Can I come with 10 friends?
Whoa.
It's a very well-known story people have told before about a very famous critic.
Okay.
Who did this. And then all of a sudden, like some of these wines of this winery, this Tuscan winery, started getting better scores. Like that happens a lot. And, you know, I've heard offhanded comments a bunch of like, oh yeah, you know, full vacations because of, and so like, again, that's not the spending with the publication. That's spending with the individual critic of the publication.
Yeah.
But I also like, because there's so many of them at these publications, it's also very hard to police all of that. Unless you just have a very strict no trip policy, no visit policy, no in person. But like, of course, like you bring these people into your wineries and like you inflate their egos. They feel really good, and then you give them something.
They love
right?
your wine,
and then they love you, and then you ask them to do master classes for you in New York or San Francisco or whatever when you're here, and like they start speaking on your behalf. But that's only because they scored your wine well. It's not because you're also trying to ensure they score your future wine well. Like but again, it is the system that we have, and like look again, I think that it existed.
Isn't that all blind?
So
nope.
No. But
absolutely not.
Aren't these? Whoa.
So there's a claim that all the wines are tasted blind,
right?
But like, first of all, I think that some of these people 100% can tell the wines they're tasting and know the producers, et cetera. But also, even when they go to some of these wineries and they taste fine, so they'll taste their slate blind, right? But like they know that they're at Da Milano.
Okay, got it.
That often happens, or they'll go to the consortium. But like, again, it's blind. I don't know. I've again heard thousands of stories of how this does or doesn't work.
I've been there when critics have been tasting wines with wineries, and sometimes people taste blind. I think it depends a little bit on what you're trying to do. But when you're reviewing an individual winery's like set of wines, the critics that I've seen do that 100% know exactly what's in their glass every time.
Yeah.
And those are the ratings that are going onto websites.
Yes.
Sometimes, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
or
again,
they're saying,
every publication.
Now submit it blind so I can rescore it again. You remember what you scored.
Maybe.
It.
Okay.
But I think like the bigger problem here is that this stuff is murky, and different publications and different critics and different reviewers have different standards and approaches, and there isn't a degree of consistency, which is whatever. Again, it comes back a little bit to, if you find a reviewer whose wine scores you tend to agree with. I mean, this is a big thing that made Robert Parker go, right? There was a big audience for the kinds of wines he was scoring highly that were perhaps previously unserved or underserved by other wine critics, other wine reviewers, and that has obviously spawned many imitators, or at least kind of people. Basically, everyone copied what he liked.
Yeah.
And but not just producers kind of going in that direction, but also of course other reviewers sort of having a similar point of view, or at least something along those lines. But I think that, again, it comes back to this thing where as there's more and more saturation, as there are, individual reviewers or publications that are focused on specific regions or specific, kind of parts of the United States, say, and then you have on top of that, for each of these publications, specialists in each, or at least people who are focused on individual regions, like all of it becomes murky. And so that's where you get this thing where you were talking about at the beginning, Adam, where you see like a 95 on a store shelf and you have to have like a little magnifying glass to even figure out what publication gave it that score and who is and what merit it is. And like,
again,
that is, I think there's still a degree of, people see a point score that starts with a 9 and ends with a, number larger than 5, and they're like excited about it. But if you don't really, I just think a lot of those are, I don't know if they're meaningless, but they have less meaning than they used to, maybe.
I think they're meaningful if you like that publication, and they're meaningful if you know that publication's history. I think it's also like where, we, for example, have taken a great interest in really scoring American wine and wine from especially like newer producers, up and coming, et cetera. Like that's important to us.
Yeah.
So like if you're in that world too, like you would trust us over any other publications all of a sudden decided to jump into that area because we've been doing it for a long time. I mean, you could argue that like if you're really into Bordeaux, like Robert Parker's been scoring that shit for decades. Yep. So like, that would potentially be at least, now the critics have come and gone, but again, you have to decide if you care about that as much. I think where we found scores to be useful for our business is that it really allows us to shed light on really cool up and coming wineries and winemakers that don't get any other attention otherwise. Because I also think the fault of the other publications, and it's, look, how can you blame them at this point? Like if you're getting DRC and shit submitted to you all the time, then
why are you going to seek out small?
They score the same big, well-known, fancy brands every year. They score the same verticals of all these different wines every year. They're always tasting Opus One. They're always tasting The Prisoner. They're always tasting like all these wines that like, okay, cool, but like that's not where the future of wine is headed. That's not what's going to get anyone young and excited about wine, which is why we don't really score those wines, right? We score wines that we think are going to get people excited about wine.
Okay, yes, but we also don't get sent a lot of those wines.
Yeah, but
too.
like we could continue to keep seeking them out. But first of all, they wouldn't send it to us. They're like, well, we only send a few to wine, and then we also don't charge, and they all charge.
Right.
So whatever. That is all to say, I think scoring is what you make of it. If you decide that you like reading third-party validation to help you determine what wines to drink, great. You do but you need to do the research to determine which publications, which critics you should trust.
Yeah,
or you can follow. I don't want to say blindly, but at least follow somewhat. I think you can follow Keith blindly. I'd follow Keith to the end of the earth with what he told me to drink. To be very honest, I think he's extremely ethical and very, just like focused on it's only about, as Keith says, I only like good wine. I truly believe that. I don't think everyone is like Keith though. So if you have to determine, like, if you found someone that's like him that just truly just is passionate about wine and is going to say, and gives zero fucks for saying when there's a wine that everyone else poo-poos, look, there is actually things that are good about this wine.
Yeah.
And also likes the wine that the cool kids like, or the trendy bougie, wealthy Upper East Siders like. Like that I think is important for me. Some people might just be like, look, I just want to follow a critic that is going to show me what is going to be worth investing in.
Yeah.
And that's a choice.
Yeah. I think that ultimately people need to understand that all of these ratings are extremely subjective.
Yes.
Regardless of the the factors that, the official factors that are in place for around these tastings, that ultimately it's going to come down to some, a reviewer and their taste and their palate. And I think that as much as you want to say that somebody can go to a wine shop and see a 95 wine that, that might be not as great to somebody else. And so you have to understand that. Right?
And I also think that the thing we have to come to terms with in this world, and I think it's because there still is an older generation that felt about the critic a very different way than our generation does and the generation below us does, is that the power of the critic is just much more diffused than it used to be. There are so many of them. And I think I saw that firsthand happening in the music business when I was at JW in indie rock, right? Where like, when I was first coming into music, the most powerful critic was Pitchfork, right? Like if you got a certain score on Pitchfork at that time,
that was the authority. Yeah.
Darby's in the room and I can see I'm like bringing up old memories, but like it did matter. Like all of a sudden, like, you're playing Bowery and shit. They don't fucking matter anymore. They just don't.
Right.
But most critics don't. Now it's like, what are your streams like on Spotify? And like, how many followers you have on fucking TikTok and all these other games that I would never want to play if I was a musician. But like at the time, it was all about like our relationship with Pitchfork. And we would specifically hire publicists we knew had good relationships with critics at Pitchfork to determine who we hired for an album release. You guys don't think there was grift going on there? For fucking sure there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It's happened in a lot of other industries too.
Yeah.
Like we have seen a lack of, the kind of erosion of the critic, especially sort of a traditionally placed and credentialed one in, not just wine, not just music, but certainly food, movies, all these things where people, not that those people don't matter at all, and it's just that fewer of them matter. And as you've had this kind of proliferation of other voices, either other critics in the case of wine, or a million people blogging about food or posting things on social about food, things like that. Like all these other people who have put themselves out there as one form of authority or another, it has kind of undermined a little bit the impact.
Yeah.
And yet it is interesting, to the point that you brought up a while back, Adam, that some retailers like Costco are still very dead set on
I think that's
relying
stupid as
on
shit.
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of there's a logic to it when you are a retailer the size of Costco, where you kind of have to have some kind of rubric by which you make purchase decisions, because one of the big ones is you have to be able to actually have the volume as a producer to support the wine. So they're not going to buy, each shop is not, each Costco is not having its own wine program that's run by someone in store.
And also, I guess the thing too with that, with a Costco or with a Walmart or anything like that, right, would be that if you just let whoever came into that role determine it based on their own palate set, or you'd be like also flipping entire sections of wine every time.
Right.
And you're supposed to be a company where like people come in and out of buyers of sections as part of their career trajectory. So I mean, I think the famous story, right, was that the woman who used to be the really powerful buyer of wine at Costco, prior to that was like the buyer of toilet paper and like toilet supplies and things like that. And so like
natural progression.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally natural. You go from toilet water to drink. Well, if it was natural wine, it would be a natural progression, right?
God.
Gotcha. But yeah, I think that's a very good point. But I don't know. We
also, haven't considered something like a Vivino or whatever that plays
I don't want to talk
into
about Vivino on
No,
this.
but this is how people search for wine now, too. And they see those types of user-generated scores, too. And that definitely...
That's another conversation.
Okay.
We're talking about scores, not user.
But it has helped erode the importance of the critic.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Yes, exactly.
It has. Oh, Vivino. We always thought you were going to die and you just kept living.
People use it.
I know they do. But there were like multiple points where people were like, they're going to go away. They're going to die. Remember Delectable? That shit really shit the bed
No,
fast.
I don't know what that is.
Anyways, let us know what you think about scores. Hit us up at podcast@VinePair.com, and I'll talk to y'all on Thursday.
Have a fantastic week.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much for listening to the VinePair Podcast, the flagship podcast of the VinePair Podcast Network. If you love this podcast, please leave us a rating or review wherever it is that you are currently listening to it on. It really helps other people discover the show. Also, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your colleagues. Basically, tell anyone about the VinePair Podcast. It's always very appreciated, especially by Joanna. The podcast is hosted by myself, Adam Teeter, our editor-in-chief, Joanna Sciarrino, and Zach Jabal, former sommelier from Seattle, Washington. As we all know, it is edited by Darby Seaside. Theme music also by Darby Seaside. Art for the podcast by Daniel Grinberg. VinePair was co-founded by myself and Josh Mallon. Thanks so much again for listening, and we will see you again the next time you listen to an episode. If you made it all the way through these credits, I again consider you a super fan.